and Chantal and Cheryl. Hey. Oh, yeah, sorry. I particularly like the traditional Cree pink hair. It's a Treaty 7. No, it's a Saskatchewan Cree thing. It really is not Treaty 7. I'm sorry. As you can see, we have had the great honor and privilege of Cheryl and Chantal opening a number of meetings for us here in Calgary. And I'm enormously honored to be here. C'est un grand honneur pour moi d'être ici parmi mes collègues, mes homologues, parce qu'il y a aussi les chefs de parti de quelques provinces ici ce matin. I'm not sure if I've spotted all the leaders of provincial Green parties, but before I begin, what I wanted to say, I want to acknowledge the Green Party leader who's come from the farthest away and just went through his own battle royale for fair voting, the great PEI leader, Peter Bevan Baker. Moving west, I think the next Green Party leader who's in the room is the Ontario Green leader, the wonderful Mike Schreiner. Where are you, Mike? Mike? Somewhere? Mike? Mike? Give it up for Mike Schreiner! I haven't seen him yet, but I think, I'm sad to say I haven't seen him yet, but I think the Quebec leader of the Quebec Greens is here, Alex Terrell. And next in our great big map of Canada, Manitoba Green leader James Badom. I don't know if Sean Sate... Sean, there you are, leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party. Sean. Leader of the Alberta Green Party, Janet Keeping. Are you in the house? Janet? Thank you for being here, Janet. We're in your territory. And of course, our British Columbia Green leader is not with us today, but I think it's a tremendous turnout of other BC Greens and Green Party candidates heading into the provincial election this spring. I wanted to give you all a sense and my daughter's my timekeeper. How much time have I used up?
You're at 17.
Okay. I'm not going to take longer than my allotted time. I wanted to share with you some history about the Green Party of Canada and where our values come from. You've all received a briefing package. A lot of you were a lot. I know that Andy Shadrack over here and Paul George and Adrian Carr are there. There's some founders here of the Greens going back to 1983. But some of you are newer than that. And the history of where we got our green values is something that even a lot of Greens still pause to think about. Now, you've seen them in the Constitution, and you know these are the values that guide Greens around the world, not just in Canada, not just in BC, not just in Alberta. These are the values that guide Greens in Germany and in New Zealand and in Australia and in Zimbabwe, all around the world. So they are 1, ecological wisdom, 2, social justice, 3, participatory democracy, 4, nonviolence, 5, sustainability, and 6, respect for diversity. These are the values that guide us. Now, where did they come from? And that's what I wanted to share. When the Greens first started in the early 80s in Germany, and then in British Columbia, and then in Canada, these were not the founding Green values because the notion of having a global Green Party had not yet occurred. And the Green Party globally didn't really assert itself till 2001 at the first gathering of Global Greens in Canberra, Australia. Was anybody in this room in Canberra? You weren't there, were you, Adrian? You were in Canberra? Steve Kisby, I should have known. Okay, so the founding, so the creation of Global Greens, thank you, Steve, I should know. Why don't I know? There was an overlap between something I'd been part of that started around the time of the Rio Earth Summit and didn't come to fruition until Rio +5. And the overlap person was an academic from Australia named Brendan Mackey. And he brought to the Global Greens Here's how we find our values. There's a document recently developed called the Earth Charter. So those 6 global green values can be tracked into the Earth Charter, and you can find greater depth and information and a balancing that was extraordinary. But my experience of that, and I was enormously blessed to have been selected as one of about 30 commissioners to the Earth Charter Commission. It was co-chaired by the late Maurice Strong, Canadian environmental international diplomat, and by Mikhail Gorbachev. So I was in a small room in Rio in a hotel with Mikhail Gorbachev, who chaired the meeting in Russian with translation. But it was a tiny setting. And people like Mercedes Sosa, the amazing late Argentinian singer. And we had people coming from former politicians like the former Prime Minister of Netherlands, Ruud Lubbers, and the former President of Mali, and youth. It was important to have youth in the room, and it was David Suzuki's daughter, Severin Cullis Suzuki, who's now living on Haida Gwaii and part of the Haida Nation. There were also people who came from a theological background. The great Brazilian liberation theologist, Leonardo Boff. We were advised by cosmologists, for those of you who like The Universe is a Green Dragon, Brian Swim and Mary Evelyn Tucker were advising this group of really eclectic. We had First Nations Indigenous advice. Henrietta Rasmussen, who's an Inuk woman politician from Greenland. It was eclectic. It represented a lot of streams. I'll never forget trying to negotiate women's reproductive rights with a pushback from someone who really understood Islam, Princess Basma of Jordan, King Hussein's sister, who, while British educated and entirely as women's right to choose as anyone you want to find, knew what the reaction would be in her country. So the negotiations were really green. And they were all about finding consensus on every word. And being able to say out loud, the world is one. We are part of an evolving universe. We are co-creators in an evolving universe, and put it in the kind of language that has now been endorsed by governments. Not a lot, but some. United Nations agencies like UNESCO, and Mexico is one nation that endorsed it. Costa Rica is one nation that endorsed it. But it puts us firmly in a position that we endorse and work towards a culture, not just peace is the absence of war, but pursuing a culture of peace and nonviolence as core green values. It puts us in the culture that was informed by a prominent Gandhian from India who's since passed away, Kamla Chaudhry, who made it be part of the words of the Earth Charter that in the end, what basic human needs are met. Having more can never replace being more. These are our values. We are not a floating political party, victim to the whims of changed public opinion. We are firmly rooted in principle and values, and they come from people like Wangari Maathai, another member of the Earth Charter Commission, founder of the Kenyan Green Party, and the first person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for her environmental work. We come from a really great place where we are on solid ground, where we stay with our values, and stay with our values of respect and consensus building. Now, another core green value that came out of the Global Greens Charter from Canberra, Australia, was the commitment to proportional representation and fair voting. It's right there in our core green values globally. And it attaches itself perfectly to our commitment to participatory democracy. It's what we're all about as Greens. So there are very few Green parties that struggle against first-past-the-post decision-making. There are the UK Greens and my colleague Carolyn Lucas, who, like me, is the only Green MP in her parliament. Only, thank goodness, I'm in 338 members of parliament setting. She's with over 600 in the UK parliament, and she shines above all the rest. She's the one that The Guardian always points to as the one who's taking the stance that matter, getting arrested to fight against fracking. She's the one that people turn to when they want to know who's really addressing the problems of the poor and the disenfranchised and the marginalized in the UK. And then there are the U.S. Greens, who fight against the most unfair voting system that anyone's ever concocted. The one that can be run by corporations, unconstrained by rules about donations. Well, we had one heck of a week this week. I now am free to talk about the Electoral Reform report. I passed it over here. Do we still have it? Oh, Andy, don't lose it. I brought one hard copy. You know how it is. You guys have probably all found it online. I'm still a person who needs to carry around my copy. We have a real job to do at this convention. This is brilliant timing. I couldn't be more thrilled that we're all here together, because we have to do a couple of things that are important. One, obviously, is to deal with those motions from August. We know we were gathered here with 3 core goals that were part of the notice that went out 90 days ago. We're here to address the electoral reform issue, for which the Green Party still does not have a specific policy other than that we want proportional representation. Do we need to do more with that now that we've got this report? Second, we need to deal with any resolutions from August that were arrived at without our usual consensus process, and you'll hear more about the consensus work that's gone on since. I couldn't be more grateful to Paul Manley and Joanne Roberts for co-chairing the interim consensus building process on an issue that could be divisive, but should be divisive no longer. The Green Party needs to come together and support the work of consensus. And the third thing we need to do is talk about how we do our policies better. But when this weekend was chosen for this meeting, I did not know what the Elector Reform report would say. I had no idea. I don't think I could have picked this. But I knew one thing for sure. Our report would be tabled December 1st. And I needed to be with a Green family that understood our values as quickly as possible thereafter to start steering the conversation nationally and figuring out what next. And in that spirit, I want to close with the closing words of the Earth Charter. If you've never looked it up, by the way, it's this book is really hard to find, but Paul George probably has copies because he goes through all the bookstores and finds my out-of-print books. This one is called How to Save the World in Your Spare Time. It's a personal favorite of mine because it was written right after my mom had died, although she helped me review the first few chapters, because everything I ever learned about how to be an activist, I learned from my mom. And I put the Earth Charter in the back. There's a chapter in here on why Robert's Rules of Order is such a bad idea, but you can pick that up later. Anyway, it's not like I came on this idea recently. Let me close with the final words from the Earth Charter, and I commend it to you as a document to read and inform your understanding of our core Green values as a party. Let ours be a time remembered for the awakening of a new reverence for life, the firm resolve to achieve sustainability, the quickening of the struggle for justice and peace, and the joyful celebration of life. Miigwech, merci, thank you.